Hello, geeks, freaks, and all those unique. This is EmceeFrodis, and we're blasting into the future with Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, Episode 11, Sukai. This review of this episode is a little bit late because of the holidays, so I hope if you celebrate, you had a Merry Christmas, and if you don't, that you had just a really good Friday. But getting into this episode. So this episode has the crew of the Discovery going to investigate the ship that, or the crash site of the Kelpian ship that was putting out the distress signal. But they come upon this nebula. Within there's a planet made of dilithium, and we have one Kelpian life sign, which Saru points out is the person who was putting out the distress call was pregnant. So this one life sign must be their child, which I think this is the first time we found out that Kelpians' lifespans far outstrip humans, because this child, even though they were born in this nebula, has still been there for 125 years. So they're quite old. That's an interesting thing to know. So Discovery is going to send an away team in to see what they can find out. And Saru is going to go, as well as Michael and Culber. And so we meet with this Kelpian, and we're going to try to get him out. And I thought this episode was good, to an extent. There was some parts that I liked, and then there's some parts that I really kind of questioned. I loved having Culber on the away team. I'm loving what they're doing with him this season. Having him really lean into this counselor role is, I think, the most natural the counselor role has ever felt on any Star Trek series. We've had several regulars who have been counselors, but they've never quite understood what that meant. And I think they're finally getting that with Culber. And I think part of that comes from the fact that it is a natural progression for his character. He started out as a doctor and then getting into the counseling stuff later because of the trauma he's gone through makes sense. And I love the stuff with Culber and Stamets, and how Stamets is just really trying to convince Culber not to go, and specifically calling out Adira as a reason why Culber shouldn't go. I adore just how Stamets, who is one of the more standoffish, brusque characters on the show, how he has just absolutely made this 180 just in terms of Adira. He has completely adopted them as his offspring, and it's so sweet. I love everything about that relationship. I like how at the memorial service, when Gray showed up, Stamets started fighting with this person that he doesn't even know if he's actually there. Because as far as Stamets knows, Gray is entirely in Adira's head. But Stamets doesn't care. He's gonna fight with them about, how can you do this to my child? How can you abandon them? Like, come on. Not cool. Love that so much. But the meat of this episode is the away team to this structure that was made to nurture the child. And it's all done with holograms, and because the holograms, it processes the away team as holograms, and so they all look like different species when they come in, which was one of the most disconcerting things to see Doug Jones without any prosthetics on. Has there been anything where Doug Jones has just been a human on TV? I mean, other than like doing interviews or whatever. Usually you see him in just like the heaviest of heavy makeup. So seeing him as just himself is, I mean, not that I'm not saying that Doug Jones is an unattractive person, but it's unnerving to see him just as himself. I memean, especially when he's still doing the Saru walk and everything, and it's like, no, Saru is not supposed to be human. I don't, I'm uncomfortable with this. But seeing Saru reacting to this Kelpian child, or not even a child, but somebody who's just acts childlike because they had no interactions with anybody for their entire life, and seeing how Kelpian society has changed over the years since he was around. You can definitely see how everything is affecting Saru. And it is compromising him being the captain of Discovery. Speaking of captains, because Saru went on this away mission, and his first officer is Tilly. Tilly takes the captain's chair. And I think that it had to happen if we were going to be naming Tilly the first officer. There had to be a situation where she ended up in command. And I've seen people complain about the fact that Tilly goes right from ensign to first officer, but as somebody who really loves the Kelvinverse, I am not going to be upset about this evolution of her character. I think that Tilly's very strong, and she certainly can do this. I think things are going to go bad because we're nearing the end of the season, but I like the talk that Michael had with Tilly, basically about how Giorgio and Michael and Saru, how they all feel insecure, and no matter what the rest of the crew think, that they do become nervous, and that it's okay for Tilly to not, to feel those nerves as long as she is able to follow through with things. Now, obviously, things go very badly with the Emerald Chain coming in. This episode it's, I think, the third to the last episode of the season, so certainly we are building up towards the finale, and in this, we seem to get something of an answer about what happened with the burn, the cause of the burn. It's fine. I mean, they needed to come up with some explanation, but the thing is, y'all made such a big deal about it that I feel like it should have been more than this. This was a galactic catastrophe, and the answer they came up with seemed very small. Now, granted, small actions can have ginormous consequences, but when you've been hammering away at it basically every single episode this season, we have to figure out what happened with the burn. We have to figure out what happened with the burn. This feels like a letdown. And I think more of this season is going to be focused on the Emerald Chain. So, as things are progressing this season, I'm realizing I don't really care about the mystery of the burn, especially if this is the explanation. Because are they going to be able to find a way to turn the burn around? Can they undo it? Like, I mean, if obviously they can't undo it, because you had just one of the reasons why it was so terrible is you had hundreds and hundreds of ships that were at warp at the time that blew up because their dilithium suddenly became inert. You can't fix that. So the Federation is going to remain broken. So I don't see how discovering the cause of the burn, other than the fact that it looks like this kid can still do what caused the burn. So we have to, fix that so that he doesn't do it again. I guess that makes it a little more immediate, but still, considering at this very end they're trying to build up the emerald chain as such a problem, I would have leaned heavier into that, because I still don't know enough about the emerald chain, and I'm wondering if it might have been stronger if they had just done, here's a catastrophe that happened within the Federation. It caused the Federation to basically disband, and the emerald chain kind of took control. If it had been that, like, up front, had an explanation for it, and since instead of investing all of this time into trying to figure out something that's not really going to have a lot of effect, you had built up a stronger antagonist, then maybe I would have enjoyed this a lot more. So in this episode, we got to see Gray again. Gray's been missing for several episodes, and he suddenly shows up. And I've been hypothesizing that, something was pulling him away, or that he was staying away so that Adira could move on. Neither of which seemed to be the case. It actually seems that Gray was leaving because of him. Because he was upset that he couldn't affect things in this world. He couldn't interact with anybody but Adira. So he kind of just closed in on himself. Which I think raises some interesting questions as to what's going to happen with him in the future. I've already said in previous episodes that I believe that Gray will somehow get a body again. We already know that Ian Alexander is going to be in season 4, and I don't think they're going to continue on with Imaginary Boyfriend for too long. However, with this episode, I feel like we've potentially set up a out for this. How we can basically resurrect Gray without resurrecting Gray. And so I'll throw this out just because, I'd like to have the I told you so moment if this turns out to be the case. So at the end of this episode, Adira decides to go onto the planet to help Stamets and Culber because they will die if they don't get radiation pills. So Adira teleports down to the planet. Now, we already know that this planet can cause strange things to happen, as all of these characters have, switched species, and we know it's not just an appearance thing. It is an actual physical thing, because Saru comments on walking on his heels instead of his hooves. So there's a physical change. So I'm wondering if Adira sees Gray as another being that seems to actually be there, only Adira is the only person that can see him. If when they teleport down, if maybe whatever program is in the computer might manifest Gray as a person. Now, I think there might still be holograms involved in all of this. But considering we had the Holo Doctor on Voyager, and this is 600 years after Voyager, I think that we can have holographic Gray, basically, on the ship. And be able to go, mobile emitter or whatever. So I think that might be the way that they'll bring Gray back without, totally cheating and being like, here, we're going to magically regrow your body. I mean, I guess making him a holographic one is kind of magically regrowing him a body. But whatever. This is just a theory based on the evidence that I've seen so far. And do I hate it? No. No, I mean, I'd be fine with this depending on how it carries out. I mean, that's always the way things go. I'm fine with things depending on how they carry out. So, I mean, like, this was a third to last episode where certainly we are building up the tension to get to the last episode. I feel like the momentum of the season was lost a little bit by having the two-parter right before this that was dealing with Philippa, because that just took us entirely away from the Emerald Chain or the Burn, any of this stuff. It was focusing on the Mirror Universe and Philippa, which is now a moot point. One thing I would like to say in regards to season 4, we need some promotions, not on the bridge, but on the show itself. I would like to see Detmer and Awowo promoted to the opening credits, because they have been regular characters this season. I am invested in them as members of the main crew. I mean, it's like how you had like O'Brien on Next Generation, or Rom and Nog on Deep Space Nine. These are characters that are around that should be members of the opening, main cast. And certainly the ones that I just named never actually made it to main cast on the shows that I mentioned. But also, they're in every single episode. So let's do this thing. Like, give them the promotion that they deserve. But I'm looking forward to seeing where everything leads. I mean, definitely Discovery's in the shit right now with the Emerald Chain kind of taking over the ship. And this episode was fine in getting us to where we needed. I have questions. We got some answers. Some of them I'm fine with, and some of them just kind of raise further questions. But it was okay. So tell me what you thought of Sakai. Comment down below. If you like my videos, subscribe to my channel. I do videos about Star Trek, Star Wars, Supernatural, Doctor Who, and lots of other geeky things. If you'd like to support me, go to my Patreon. You can get early access to videos, participate in polls, and lots of other things. You can also buy me a coffee. Or if you'd like stuff to wear, go to my Redbubble or TeePublic to buy some of my geeky graphic designs. Today I am wearing my Bisexual Starfleet Pride shirt. So, until next time, live long and may the Force be with you.